right, hello and welcome back. This is Great Living Sources YouTube channel. My name is GL Snodgrass, and today I'm going to talk briefly about two slides that I created. That's part of a class that I've been working on. I know I've had a lot of people talk to me about having some challenges, trying to determine where to start, what to start first, all this stuff, and getting ready to be, or to be ready for emergency or disaster. So I'm hoping that the class that I'm working on and that these two slides will help to give you a place to start and where to focus at, because that's the whole key part of this thing. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the disaster timeline. Okay, so the disaster timeline basically starts, and this is how this relates to the plan. So the plan, we've identified what it is that we're going to be concerned with. Okay, that's one aspect. We also have to determine what the resources are and what the skills are that we're going to need in order to go through the emergency or the disaster. Now, as we've talked about in other videos and stuff, we've said that a lot of the basics are the same no matter what the event is, whether it's a series of events, a snowstorm, 6-month grid down, whatever. You still have to focus on the basics: food, water, shelter. Those are the aspects that we're going to talk about. We'll talk about those in just a minute. So we have the resources, but we also are going to need skills. And certain skills are going to be critical, especially during a disaster emergency scenario. So we've broken them down. We've broken these disasters and emergencies down into two groups. So you have the short-term event and a long-term event. Now, a short-term event, we're saying, is 6 months to a year-ish. Just depends on what it is. There's a lot of gray area in there, but for the sake of this class, I'm going to break them down into short-term and long-term. Short-term is 6 months to a year. Long-term is greater than a year. Okay, so short-term events are typically like your minor emergencies, natural disasters, tornadoes, floods, snowstorms, etc. End of the world as we know it, or stuff has hit the fan, is going to be along the lines of a 6-month grid down, financial collapse, EMP, nuclear war. Those things are going to be long-term, meaning it's going to probably take longer than a year for anything to come back to a semblance of normal. So in the arrow, you'll see there's a normal and there's a new normal on the right side. The big arrow at the top is the return to normal. So somewhere between when the event starts and a year, it could be 6 months, could be a year, somewhere in between there, eventually things are going to come back to the normal that we understand today. Basically, that's that civilized veneer is going to come back. Okay? So the skills and the resources that you need for that, you need to at least extend beyond that time frame. So you need to have, if you think that the event's going to be a year, then you need at least a year worth of supplies and resources. Okay? Same thing with the skills. Skills that you'll need for short-term duration is like, how to start fire, perhaps how to find water, how to purify water. So all of these things, so the skills and the resources that you need for a short-term event are the same as the ones that you would need for a long-term event. The difference is, once you start getting into a long-term event, the ability to resupply is going to be curtailed or potentially curtailed. You're going to have to barter. You're going to have to trade. You're going to have to grow your own. You're going to have to make your own tools, implements, etc. Your protection is going to be different. So that's what this is. So the mindset for a short-term event is basically to survive until normal returns or until we return to normal. And again, that's going to coincide with the resupply aspect. Long-term mindset is you're going to have to accept this new normal and then have to procure your own resupply. Again, barter, trade, and grow. Now, the other thing I want to talk about real quick is the matrix. So basically this matrix I put together is how to be ready and what to focus on first, okay? So in this diagram, you'll see the goal at the top. It's to be prepared, to be ready for whatever event that we just talked about on the previous slide. Okay, so in that, you need the plan. The plan also includes the spiritual, mental, and physical aspects. In other words, that's the part where we have to stay balanced in order for the rest of this stuff. Because if you aren't balanced, then it almost doesn't matter how much food, water, shelter, protection, sanitation, medical, financial, energy, or comms you have. You're not going to be able to use it because you're not going to be able to think straight. Okay, so you have to be able to stay balanced. So our focus in getting ready is the first tier, that first line. So, and this goes across both short-term and long-term events. Okay, so it's just a question of how much of a buffer you have if it's a long-term event. Short-term event, typically 6 months. We're good, we do our thing, we make it through, and then we go back, and then when things get back to normal, we go back to the store and we resupply everything that we used during this event, and we're all back on track. So your focus first needs to be on that core calm, that spiritual, mental, and physical. Let me rephrase that. Not focused solely on that. That's in conjunction with the first tier: food, water, protection and shelter, sanitation, hygiene. Okay, so food. Again, we want food that we're normal, that you would normally eat. It can be, Thrive or Wise or canned food or home canned food, dried, whatever it is that you want, however you want to do it. If you want ideas, we can help you with that, but whatever is typical for you, and you need to figure out how much you need of that, okay? Again, start with what you have in the pantry, the fridge, the freezer, the basement, wherever your food is. Inventory it and see how much you actually have on hand, okay? In my opinion, I think typically most folks are going to have at least 2 weeks worth of food in their house. Normally, most people, okay? Maybe some more. Water is another thing. You want to make sure that you have a source of water, okay? That means bottles, glass jars, gallon bottle or jugs of water, water tanks, whatever. You need to have at least enough to make it through, okay? Typically, I would recommend minimum a gallon of water per person per day, okay? Ready.gov says that the typical person consumes or uses a minimum a gallon, 3/4 of a gallon of water a day. I'm not sure that's true, but That's what they say. So it depends on circumstances. Depends on what you're doing, what kind of shape you're in. But a gallon per day per person is probably at least a good marker to start with. Um, Obviously, if you can get more, then that's better than not having enough. Protection and shelter. Okay, these two I combine. Okay, so shelter is going to be wherever you are. Okay, so you can shelter in place at work, or you can shelter in place at home, or you can shelter in place somewhere else. Depends on where you are when the event occurs. Okay, so then you have a decision. Are you going to shelter in place where you are, or are you going to bug out and get home? Okay, or are you going to bug out and go to another location? That's a decision that you have to make based on the circumstances in which you find yourself. Okay, so that's your shelter. Protection is going to be like firearms, blades, clubs, um, whether or not you're going to do lethal or non-lethal depends on the circumstances, etc. So all of that is stuff that you're going to have to do, focus on. Part of that, part of these three things are a physical resource, i.e., food, water, and shelter, protection. If you have a firearm. Part of it is a skill. Okay, how to cook the food, how to start a fire, how to find water, how to purify water, how to store water. All those are skills. So there's each of these things typically have different components of the spiritual, mental, and physical, as well as the items themselves. Okay. And the last thing, and this is not necessarily in a sequential order, but the last part of the first tier, sanitation and hygiene. Now, again, this is a physical skill, or it's a mental skill. But it's also physical, because you want to be able to wash your hands. I'm not a big proponent on using Lysol on everything, because it kills not only the bad germs but the good germs. But you do want to stay sanitary during even a short-term event, and it's probably more of a challenge. In my book that's getting ready to come out, I talk about how to fix your commode so that you can go to the bathroom even during a short term when there's no water. Okay, short-term event and there's no water, so power may be out or whatever, but that is part of the sanitation thing, because that's going to get ugly quick if you don't take care of that. Okay, so then the next tier is, I will say, is equally important, but it's not the priority, because you have to be able to take care. If you have medical, but you don't have food and water or shelter or protection, then it doesn't matter if you have a medical kit and first aid supplies at the yin yang, because you're going to starve to death. Okay, so if you are just starting out, or you're not sure what to focus on next, you want to focus on the first tier, then you focus on the second tier. Financial, that's like having stuff, money, coins, silver, gold, whatever saved up to use to trade in the event of a long-term event. Then you can use these as bartering items. Okay. The energy is, electric stuff. Yeah, we've come to become dependent on it, but at the end of the day, I can live without electricity. I cannot live without food or water. Okay, so focus on basics first tier items. Communications. Communications is important, but again, I can't eat a ham radio. Yeah, it may be ham, but it's not the right kind. So you need to focus on those things, that on the basics first, And then as you get to your goal, first is 6 months, second is a year, then you can start to focus on diverting assets to, I would focus on the medical next, comms, energy, and finance. Okay, so that part you can determine, but the food, water, and shelter, the absolute must. So I hope that helps. Again, this is going to be part of a class. This class is probably going to be 2 or 3 hours long. It's going to be at least 2 because it's already 2 right now. But basically, I'm going to walk you through each of these 8 aspects to include the spiritual, mental, and physical portions of this, of being ready to get everything squared away. So, hope this helps. Again, like and share our videos so that others can figure out, see what's going on. Maybe this will help them as well, but they need to be able to find it. If you have questions, comments, complaints, whatever, let me know. If you have a topic that you'd like us to cover, we would be glad to cover it, or to let us know so we can take a look at it and see what we can do. But so that concludes this video. Thank you for stopping by. Remember the core of calm and be ready. Okay, thank you.